Hello, this is Bill with the Wilderness Hiker. I'm going to talk about ultralight backpacking survival today. That almost sounds like a contradiction, an oxymoron, because in ultralight backpacking you take the absolute lightest thing you can no matter what, or sometimes that's the way it goes. And with survival you take big heavy things like giant knives and axes to cut down trees and build shelters and try to stay alive. And sometimes it actually turns into a survival thing when people are lost in the woods. And that's what I always think about when I'm out in the woods. I don't take the absolute lightest thing possible because I found out by experience that sometimes those things don't work well. You get wet, you get cold, you get eaten up by bugs, and all kinds of problems with stuff that just doesn't work right. I don't want to take the heaviest stuff either, but I want to, if shit hits the fan, if everything goes wrong, worst case scenario and all of that, I want to be ready to survive and to improvise and get back safe and just turn it into another adventure instead of being in a desperate situation in the woods. I've got several things here on the table. These are important things to have. I'm going to talk about all of them later. And here is the most important thing, it's your brain. I grew up doing outdoor stuff all of my life. When I was a little kid, I was in the Boy Scouts, and we did everything that there was to do from the beginning up to Eagle Scout and to Junior Assistant Scoutmaster, and I was a Scoutmaster when I was adult. And that's just the beginning, because Boy Scouts really is most of the time just entry-level stuff. But it's good, it gets people out in the woods. I've gone all kinds of places, climbed mountains and everything by myself. I always invite my friends, and I would rather go with them, but if they're not going to go, then I'm just going to go anyway. And I hear all kinds of excuses. It's too cold, it's going to be wet. The only one I haven't heard yet is I have to wash my cat. And I suppose that will come along sometime soon. So I just don't listen to all that. I just go. And I'm always ready. And that's why I'm talking about survival today. What you do when you're out in the woods and shit hits the fan, the worst case scenario, everything goes wrong. How do you make it work right and turn it out for good? You're 100% responsible for your own safety. Learning about survival is learning risk management in the woods. Just like defensive driving is learning risk management when you drive a car. You could get injured, you could get killed driving a car. They're actually very dangerous. But we learn defensive driving to take the risk from very high to something low that we can accept, that we'll try to live with. It's the same thing with learning survival techniques in the woods. If you just go out there with no experience, don't know what you're doing, you're in a high risk place. But once you've learned all the survival techniques, you've lowered your risk to very low. It's never 100% safe. So all the running around playing with axes and knives and all kinds of stuff, that's for another video. This is just how to apply some of those things to backpacking. If you go climb a mountain, which I've done, sometimes you're not going to make it to the top. You have to call and say, I'm going to turn around and go back. My buddy's sick, the weather's bad, everything went wrong. It's just time to turn around and come back another day and climb the mountain another day. And I've done that. If you're not setting your goals high enough that you always achieve your goal, well, your goals aren't high enough. If you have high goals, sometimes you're going to fail, but you've also got to learn how to call it and say, come back tomorrow. This is not the end of the world survival scenario either. You know, the world is coming to an end. There's prophets for profit that are predicting the end of the world, and they can make a lot of money. And it makes a lot of cool movies too. You can see the zombies and all of that, but that's not where it's at. This is real world stuff. The most important piece of equipment for survival is your brain. You'd be better off to go off into the woods with nothing but your brain screwed on right and the clothes on your back than with all the equipment that money can buy. The equipment's great. I'm definitely going to take it. That's secondary. The brain is worth more than everything else. The most important thing about the brain is attitude. You have to have the attitude that you're going to thrive. So get a real attitude.
If you're like, quote unquote, a badass in this sport or a badass in trail where people's like metal, Isn't it METTLE, mettle, like your endurance, your ability to handle shit. It's completely tested down here.
Just in your face attitude. I'm going to thrive. I'm not just going to survive. I'm going to do well no matter what happens. The whole world can fall apart and I'm still going to be just having a good time out there. From attitude, you need to add experience. And experience is both knowledge, things you learn, and putting it in practice. Going out and do it. This is my 6th bushcraft challenge where I'm going out to see what's the minimal amount of gear I can use. This time I didn't bring anything except the clothes on my back. And from experience comes confidence. You feel confident you can go out there and accomplish all kinds of goals. Hello, I'm Bill with the Wilderness Hiker. I'm in Colorado at Mount Yale. Going up Mount Yale. Here's the map and we're going to go right up to there. From confidence, you're going to thrive. You talk about survival. One of the things is, what do you do to rescue people? And the most important thing about rescue is avoiding the need of a rescue. Here's a book, Self-Rescue. It's written by David J. Falso. He's a rock climber. It's got all these cool things, pictures inside. You can do all this cool stuff. It's a lot of fun. So he went out into the woods and he was experienced and he was trying to go out and just do too much and he got himself in a bunch of trouble. And he was trying, the harder he tried to rescue himself, the worse it got. So he finally realized what he needed to do was to avoid the need of a rescue. And that's what all the survival training is. Once you've learned all this stuff, you're going to avoid the need of going into a rescue situation. And when you do, you know what to do, because like you could read this book. It's a good read. It's a lot of fun. The second most important piece of gear is your body. You don't have to be the top athlete or Navy SEAL to survive, but you do need to be physically fit. An overweight, out of shape body going off into the woods is a disaster waiting to happen. I can remember being in Webelow Scouts with my son, and we went out to the scout camp, and there was young men who should have been healthy, and they said that their doctor told them not to even go out to the Boy Scout camp, and they were there. And the reason the doctor said that is because they don't want to pull deads out of tents. They don't want to be rescuing people in a car camping place, but that was what the big risk was. I checked my son into Philmont Scout Ranch and we were there. Everybody has to go through a physical and they were weighing them and evaluating them. And there was people just absolutely in tears because they weren't going to go on the hike. They wouldn't let them. But you know, the alternative is that they would be out rescuing people in some wilderness scenario. But most of the people there were physically fit, ready to go. They had done their exercise and preparation and they were ready to go. I can remember being out on the Flat Rock 101 race course. And at the time I was recovering from an injury. I only made it halfway, but I met this lady, very large lady. I guess she was 150 pounds overweight. And I'm not trying to make fun of her, but she had this giant backpack, giant boots, and she was lost in the woods. Her family left her behind. That was terrible. Some of the runners helped her get to an aid station so she could get a ride for where she needed to go. I remember being with my friend Doug, and we were hiking a 14er in Colorado. We were starting up the mountains, and we were still in the flat part crossing a stream, and there was a couple of guys that were very much out of shape, and they had giant backpacks, and they were trying to cross the stream, and they were having a great deal of difficulty crossing the stream, and they said they were going to camp and go up the mountain the next day. Well, we talked to them when we went on, and when we came back, they were gone. So I guess they realized they just weren't going to make it. They weren't ready to go up a mountain like that. This is not about body shaming. It's not to make anybody feel bad. You know, if you're out of shape, that doesn't mean you can't get out there and do stuff. Just do stuff in your ability level. Do the easy stuff, the short stuff. Stay on a short trail or something, or exercise around your neighborhood. Normal physical fitness will work. Running, walking, bicycle, basketball, swimming, even old-fashioned farm work, the kind where instead of driving big tractors, they were out there with the axe and the hoe and the shovel and all that kind of stuff. That kept people in great physical shape. They were tough as nails. So it doesn't matter what you do something to stay in shape. If someone is 50 pounds overweight, they can go hiking through the woods. They'll probably be okay. If someone's carrying a 50-pound backpack, they'll probably be okay. But if someone's 50 pounds overweight and carrying a 50-pound backpack, they're just asking for trouble. They're liable to be injured. They're probably not going to be able to hike very far. And you know, the answer to that is that you need to lose weight and you need to get a lighter backpack and do the easy stuff until you get strong. What is ultralight? Everyone has a different opinion about what is ultralight. I've tried the lightest weight gear possible and it seldom works well for me. Why take a headlamp that doesn't work well? Why take one of those little bitty bottles of bug spray that is going to be gone in half a day? Why be cold? Why sleep wet? Why take gear that doesn't work well? I go out into wilderness areas alone. I want lightweight survival gear that's going to work well when everything goes wrong. If an experienced hiker is on an established trail, then they can get by with a lot less equipment. It's a matter of being prepared for what is safe. To survive short term, a person needs to be warm, hydrated, and have a sense of confidence that they're okay. Having the lightest gear possible is some people's goal. I just want lightweight, good gear. There are different points of view on what is ultralight. Some people want a base weight under 15 pounds. Some people want a base weight under 10 pounds. Some people want a base weight less than that. I found there's a diminishing return on what works well. I don't want to be out there with a super tiny backpack carrying Walmart bags full of food in my hands because they won't fit in my backpack. I can get under 15 pounds. It's hard to get down to 10 pounds. I'm going to be cold and wet if I do that. And to get down to 8 pounds, well, then I'm going to be cold and wet and carrying Walmart bags in my hand. And if somebody wants to do that, cool. Maybe it helps them get along the trail better. Here's a backpack that will save you lots of weight. This is an Arc'teryx backpack. It weighs 12 ounces, less than a pound. And if you're in a place you can go really, really ultralight, which sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, take something like this. I can't fit much food in it. I can't fit much of a sleeping bag, and I've gone out with it, taking this and just absolute minimalist equipment. I think it was the coldest night I ever slept. I had this for a ground pad, which works really well, as long as it's not too cold. But it was a cold night, and I had my lightweight sleeping bag on a cold night. So that's just some of the stuff that you can try. It's a warmer ground pad. Guess what? It weighs more. You need a bigger backpack. How much money does somebody want to spend on saving an ounce? There's some things that you can save for free. Some things are cheap and some things are very expensive. You can spend hundreds of dollars on backpacks, hundreds of dollars on tents, hundreds of dollars on sleeping bags, and they save weight. But at what point? How much are you willing to pay? And how warm and dry do you want to be? I can get a lighter weight sleeping bag, but it's not very warm. I can get down to a 1-pound tent, but it's a single wall tent. All the condensation is going to fall down on my sleeping bag. Not very good carrying a heavy, wet sleeping bag and trying to sleep in it and stay warm. How cold do you want to be? How wet do you want to be? Do you want to be eaten alive by bugs? Are you ready when you're out there on your hiking experience and it turns into a survival experience? Shit hits the fan, everything goes wrong. Are you ready? Decide what works best for you. I've tried the absolutely lightest weight stuff and found out it doesn't work well for me. I choose the lightest weight that works well for me. You need to choose what works best for you. That does not satisfy some people's opinion of ultralight. They can have their opinion and I'll have mine. Knives are really cool. Tools like this, people just love. They're one of the most fun things to talk about, and people think about, well, what you really need for survival is a great big giant knife. And well, maybe if that's all you had to take out in the woods, maybe that's what you would take. But actually there's better things, because you can spend all day building a fire drill trying to make a fire, or you can simply take out a lighter and light the fire. You can work all day, hours or days building a shelter, or you can just take an ultralight tent. And if you're going to do all that heavy duty work, you can take an axe, and it's fun. It's good to learn how to do all those things. And you can take a saw, and I like this saw because at 5 ounces, it is really very useful, and it actually will do a lot more than the knife sometimes. But when I'm out there just trying to ultralight, if I want to go as ultralight as absolutely possible, this knife weighs 19 grams. So if you're a gram weenie, take this knife. It's less than an ounce. You can open your food with it, but you're not going to do any heavy duty work. So the knife I prefer is this one. This is the 5 ounce knife. And that's a lot of weight for if you're trying to go backpacking ultralight, but this is my survival tool. So I will save weight on everything else and splurge on this. This is big enough and heavy duty enough that I can do all the survival things that might not be as easy to use for survival as this, but it will work. And yet it's still lightweight. Now if you want to save a couple more ounces, this one right here is another one. And this really just gets down to strictly being a survival tool. And you could actually use this for a spear point if you were out there like trying to hunt something. This is a folding camping knife from Worstoff. They're actually a kitchen knife company. This is for folding knives, pocket knives. This is really sturdy. It's a really nice knife. I love it. And that would be, one of these two is always my best first choice. This is a knife I had when I was a kid. It's a Boy Scout knife. It actually doesn't weigh that much. It's like 3 ounces. It's got the regular blade. It's got the can opener, so if you want tools like that. It's got a screwdriver and a bottle opener. This was kind of the original multi-tool. And it's got this awl for making holes. So if you want a simple, basic multi-tool camping knife, the old Boy Scout knife works well. And here I have this one. This is a beautiful knife a friend of mine gave me, but it's really not very practical, so I don't take it. Most important thing is to use your brain. If there's any theme to this video, it's use your brain. You need to learn everything, you need to practice everything, so when you're out there, you'll have a good time. Survival will just be a fun game to play. It never is going to be a desperate situation. So have a good time, play with your knives at home, take something lightweight, and have a good time on your trip. The most important thing you need for survival anywhere is water. And everyone thought it was a big, giant knife, but no, really it's water. You can live 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Well, you're going to be in trouble a lot faster than 3 days without water. And that depends on the environment. So you want to take water. You don't want to be dehydrated. You know, I've seen people out sick. I've seen people out, even I remember when I was a kid, they took some guy to the hospital because he simply didn't drink water, and when I was taking care of kids, we were almost there. I had to make a kid drink water. So these are water bottles you just get at the grocery store. They come with water, and you can refill them. They're lightweight. They're really better than the big, heavy manufactured bottles. This is one that's made. It's collapsible. It fits real easy in your pack. So if I'm going to go with the minimum amount of water, that would be 2 liters. Not 2 bottles, 2 liters. I went out with a guy in the mountains. I told him that the minimum is to bring 2 liters. He bought 2 little bottles. We had to turn around and come back. Now, if you're out there in freezing weather, you can get a thermos like this. It's heavy, but it will keep your water from freezing. You can put hot water, hot chocolate in it in the morning, hot coffee, and it will be hot in the evening. It's amazing how well it works. You can get bigger bottles like this. You can even get straws to put on them, drink while you're going. Now, if you want, you need safe water, so when you're out there, you have to collect water. And this is one way. You can take this bottle right here, fill it full of water, screw it back on, and just start drinking out the little straw. Now, this really helps you with saving weight if you're in an area where there's a lot of water available, because you don't take a lot of water. You can just always fill this up, and you don't have to wait to sanitize your water. If you're in an urban area, this does the same thing. You can fill it up, and you can, it's got this filter on it, and this has an even better filter. That one will keep out the germs. This keeps out all kinds of pollution. And this is called an Ultralight, and that's called a Sawyer. So you're out there, you have 2 to 10 liters of water, because in some environments you may need 10 liters of water. You need to find out before you go what the environment's going to be and what's the availability of water. And when you're out there and you want to sanitize your water, one thing you can use is a SHTF. This thing right here, you just put batteries in a little button, and this has a UV light, and it will kill the germs in the water if you have clear water. These are chlorine dioxide pills. This is a Catadine. There may be another brand. You can get these all kinds of camping places. You put one of these in a liter of water, wait 4 hours, and then it's ready to drink. And under certain conditions, it will actually purify the water faster, but you need to read about those. But if you don't have clear water, you're not going to get away with the SHTF, and you're not going to get away with the chlorine dioxide pills. You're going to have to do something else, either filter it or boil it or both. This is a Sawyer filter. You've got a bottle here, and you can hook all this up to your other bottle and filter the water through it. And this is another way to save weight if you're in an environment where water is readily available. You simply hook all this stuff up and let the water drip through the filter. And last, you can boil water. And this thing right, you have a little stove of some kind. You build a fire, put the water in a pot, and boil it. And if your water isn't clear, then just boil it, because it either needs to be filtered so it gets clear, or it needs to be boiled to kill all the germs so you don't get sick. When I was at the Grand Canyon, I went to the backcountry office because a friend of mine and I were going down into the canyon. And you go to the Grand Canyon and everybody looks like the typical American, a couch potato. And you go to the backcountry office and they all look different. They're all physically fit, outdoors people. They just totally look different. And it's a good thing most people don't go into the canyon because they'd have to be rescued. But these people are fit enough to go. But the next thing you notice when you're there, there's a big sign on the wall. And the sign has this whole story about these 2 ladies that were top-level runners, and they went down in the canyon without enough water. One of them made it out, the other one didn't. So they were physically fit. I suppose they ran road marathons where you've got water stations every 2 miles or something like that, and there was no water down there. That's a desert environment. You dry out really fast in a desert environment. You dry out really fast in the mountains. That's when you need to take lots and lots of water. I had the same thing happen when I was taking care of kids. In Boy Scouts, I had a boy. I had to make him drink water. When you go out there, you always need to have enough water. Water is heavy, and that just kind of contradicts ultralight. No matter how much you want to be ultralight, you need to have enough water. And the tricks you can do to keep yourself ultralight is you can have a filter bottle. You can have a filter so that you can quickly sanitize the water. These take 4 hours. They work good. So you need to plan how much water you need for the environment you're in, how much water is available, and which method is going to work to keep you lightweight and safe. It's survival. Hypothermia can kill people. If you look through history, it has killed a lot of people. Look at all the military operations throughout history. What kills people more than battles, and that is getting sick. They either got bad water, or they had hypothermia and froze to death. Or even if they didn't freeze to death, they just died from loss of body heat. So the most important thing for hypothermia is to stay dry. Water takes away heat 25 times faster than air. So you can think cold air. Well, you can put up with a lot of cold air, and you shouldn't, but you could. But once you get soaking wet, you're in big trouble. So the important thing is to take a rain suit. So you have a raincoat like this. This is lightweight. Works well. You can buy these online, all kinds of outdoor stores. Here's the pants. You need the pants and the shirt. So between this and this, I can go running around in 33-degree rain, and I'll be nice and toasty, dry and warm. And it's actually, once it starts snowing, that's better because you don't get as wet, usually. Now, an alternative some people have is to get the poncho. And this is what we had when I was a kid. And while they sort of work, this is far inferior to getting the coat and pants. If you want to get the cheap coat and pants, go online to Frog Togs. They sell the cheap coat and pants, and they work. I prefer the better one. When you go out, you always want to keep your shelter with you, because if something happens, that's your survival. You need your shelter. So your primary shelter is your clothing. And you have, like this thing right here, is not only keeps the water off, it's a windbreaker and an extra layer for warmth. But for shelter, the secondary shelter is your tent. This is an ultralight tent. It's just over 2 pounds. And it's about as light as you can get with a tent that will really truly keep you dry. There's lighter weight tents that work under certain circumstances. If you want to go even less, you can get the tarp, and you can take some utility cord. And of course, if you're going to do that, you want the knife, so you can make a little pole. You can make some tent stakes if you have to. Drive your tent stakes in with a rock or with a log. So this is some of the stuff for hypothermia. And if you ever have studied what it takes to care for a person who has severe hypothermia, it will convince you to avoid it altogether. You can get a book like this, Medicine for Mountaineering. It tells you everything you need to know how to treat someone with severe hypothermia. And it's just darn near impossible out in the woods. You almost have to get them to a hospital. And if somebody even gets into minor hypothermia, you want to start taking care of it right away. You want to stay toasty warm, and the reason for that is the safety thing. Once you start getting cold and shivering, you're just losing weight, and it's getting worse and worse, and you're on the way to getting in trouble. So you just want to avoid that altogether and stay warm. And to stay warm, mostly what you need to do is to stay dry. You can buy these little bitty tiny 1-ounce clear plastic raincoat things in a lot of the department stores, outdoor stores, and if you take them out into the woods, they're liable to disintegrate in seconds. As soon as you put on a pack or walk through the bushes, they're gone. They fall apart, rip to shreds. So they're not going to work well for you, and I would never depend on those. Plastic trash bags is another thing people talk about in survival. If you're in town and you're in an emergency and you can't get anything else, you can take a plastic trash bag, cut a hole in it for your face, and put it over you, and that will work, sort of. It helps a little bit, but that's a really bad choice out in the woods. I wouldn't take it. Some people would. I won't. If you get really wet and you're out in the woods, one of the things you can do is stop, set up your tent. You've got your shelter with you. Dry off the best you can. Boil some water so you can make coffee, hot chocolate, soup, and drink that to warm yourself up. or you can put it in a water bottle. Put your hot water in your water bottle, wrap a little t-shirt or something around it and put it next to your body so that you have something that will warm you up. Those are things that you can do if you're out there and everything's going wrong and you're just shivering, freezing cold and you need to warm up. Those things right there will warm you up. That's why you always keep your shelter with you. You always want to have plenty of water, and it's good to have the option of your little stove, and you can cook something hot to eat and to put in a hot water bottle. You can live 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. It's not a good plan to try any of that. It can get really desperate. In some environments, you can only make 1 day without water. And if you're out there in a desert environment or in a mountain environment where you're sweating a lot, it's good to take some electrolyte mix. You can put it in a bottle like this and take that with you so that you don't get hyponatremia, which is basically you sweat all the salt out. Most of the time, a lot of people are going around with too much salt in their system. Well, it's actually possible to sweat out all your salt to the point you make you sick. If you go up into the mountains and you're at high altitude, your body is changing to adapt to the altitude, and you'll pee your water out as fast as you can drink water unless you add some electrolytes to the water or have some salty food to go with it. So normally, if you're out there, 1.5 pounds of food a day is going to do fine for keeping you going. I'm a 180-pound guy. That's kind of middle size, and if you're bigger or smaller, you can adjust according to that. But if you're in a survival situation where everything is just trying to survive, you can go for several days with a calorie deficit, but you want to have some trail food. Even just a little bit of trail food like this to keep the blood sugar up can make a huge difference in your ability to travel and work and get where you need to go. So go out there and stay safe and have a good time, and always be sure you're well fed. It's part of using your brain to hike smart. Part of being able to survive out in the woods when you're ultralight backpacking or anytime you're in the woods is understanding first aid. First aid is something you have to study and you have to practice. So you study and study and study, and you practice and practice and practice until you get it right and you know how to do it. There's books that you can get on first aid. This is Medicine for Mountaineering. It's a whole book on first aid. It's a good read. Bushcraft Illustrated. Well, it's got a little bit about that in there. Here's the Self-Rescue Guide. It has something about first aid. Mountaineering. This is the textbook on mountaineering. There actually is a textbook. You want to know about outdoor activity textbook. This gets into everything, not just rock climbing and mountain climbing, but all different kinds of survival things and all of that. And here, this is my favorite first aid book, is Wilderness First Responder. There's a course, and this goes with the course. If you can't take the course, you can read the book, but you should take a course. Get with somebody out there to practice. And there's something to understand that first aid in the woods is different from first aid everywhere else. Because everywhere else, the whole idea of first aid is if someone's seriously hurt, you stabilize them and you get them to a medical facility within an hour. That hour is called the golden hour because that's when the doctors can do the most good. If you're out in the wilderness, there's no way to get right to a doctor. It could be hours or days, so you have to actually treat the person much more extensively. And well, what if you had a doctor with you? Well, he's going to be very limited because he needs all the stuff back at his office or at the hospital to do all the magic they do at taking care of people. So he's going to be down to basic first aid too. Now, if you want to know the most basic piece of first aid equipment is a roll of tape. This is sports tape right here. You can patch all kinds of human injuries with this. It's a very temporary thing, but it's very useful. You can do the same thing with duct tape. Duct tape will patch all kinds of problems with people, good enough to get them to somewhere else And of course there's the bandana. So if you had some tape and a bandana, you can do all kinds of first aid stuff. And first aid is about using your brain. It's about thinking. It's about studying. But you can't just read the books. You've got to get out there and practice and go take the course. This can make the difference between the fun hike with just a little incident to a disaster. And I've talked to people who've been rescued and they wished that they weren't rescued. I've seen people rescued that when they could have walked out and it would have been very unpleasant. And a lot of that can be avoided if you learn things like how bad it is to have hypothermia. Then you'll learn the importance of not getting it, because it's almost impossible to treat once it gets severe. Mild hypothermia is easy to treat, but all kinds of other injuries. I had a friend who was bit by a centipede. He thought it was something really badly serious, took a ride to the hospital in an ambulance. He got there and then later read and find out, well, centipede bites are rarely fatal. They're extremely painful, but you have to clean them out good because they're liable to get infected. Well, there's all kinds of things like that. But you know, taking your first aid book and your backpacking is a complete waste. Don't even bother to take it. If you haven't already read it, it's too late when you really need it. Feed your brain. This brain needs to be fed, and it needs to be fed with good information. First, you're going to read it or study it or listen to somebody who knows what they're doing, and then you're going to practice it. And I've got some books here on different things to feed your brain. Mountaineering, The Freedom of the Hills. This book has everything on outdoor activity you can imagine. If you could read this, yeah, that really does a lot for you to feed the brain. Bushcraft Illustrated, this is by a guy named Dave Canterbury. There's other people out there writing books like this. They're all a good read, and when you read these things, you need to go practice them. You want to know about hygiene in the woods? How to shit in the woods. A couple hundred years ago, it would have been silly to have written such a book, and today we all live in cities and people go out in the woods and don't have a clue what to do. This is written by a lady canoe guide, and it is just absolutely hilarious. So if you want something that'll really make you laugh, read How to Shit in the Woods. Here's my Boy Scout handbook. This thing is so old, it's 1964. It's not as old as me, but it is almost as old as me. And that is a lot of useful information. It's a good read. Self-Rescue, I talked about this earlier. That is another book that's good to read. Now, if you want to know how to survive in the office, you can watch TV shows, and I'm not sure they'll do anything much more than entertain you. But here's a book called Snakes in Suits. So survival in the corporate world, survival in the office world. I bet you've met a snake in a suit. And what do you do with them? Well, this is a psychologist, and he has studied them all his life, and he's written books with them. He's worked with the law enforcement agencies, so he knows how to evaluate them for law enforcement and how dangerous they can be. There's just all different kinds and degrees of psychopaths and every other kind of narcissist and other behavior. Les Stroud. This guy is the host of Survival Man, and he teaches you how to survive. There's a whole host of books like this, and they're all a good read. And what you can do when you're not out there, you can read books, and then you can go practice these things before you go out there. And then when you get out there, go practice them, and you'll have a well-fed brain. The most dangerous animal is a human. Humans injure and kill more people than any other animals out there. People think of lions and tigers and bears and snakes, and really, it's people that you need to be careful with. The worst encounter I ever had with a non-human animal, I was hiking on the Ozark Trail. I got up early before the sun. I hiked 27 miles. It was dark, and I came to the campsite I planned to come to all day long. And there's a man with this huge, vicious dog. He's desperately holding on to the dog. The dog is just trying to get away. And he said, "I will hold the dog while you hike through." That is not what I wanted to hear. I thought I could drop my pack, pull out my knife, tell him to turn the dog loose. But I really wasn't in the mood. So I hiked on through and I crossed a little bridge on a river on the other side, and it was the worst place I've ever slept. And that was really a disappointment. Earlier in the day, I saw two dogs. They were a matched pair of dogs. They came up behind me, didn't say anything, looked at me and went away. Those are hunting dogs, well-trained dogs. This guy had a dog that wasn't socialized. I love dogs, but I hate it when people are out there with unsocialized dogs and they're a nuisance or a threat to other people. I could carry a gun, I don't. I had a conversation with some people and I thought, well, you know, that's just an extra pound or so of weight I don't want to carry. So I'm going ultralight and I'm going to take this dead weight called a gun. I don't think so. If I had to, I would. There's places where you have to. If you're in Alaska, you know, there's brown bears and you take serious guns to go out there. But out in the woods, no. And a friend of mine told me I should have shot the dog. Well, I didn't have the gun. And another friend said if I had shot the man, the dog would have thanked me. Well, that would have created more problems. Even shooting the dog would have created more problems. So there are options, and one of those is to take a can of pepper spray. And you can get bear spray cans that are about this tall and about that big around, and they absolutely will blast something with pepper spray. You don't want to be anywhere close to that. You spray that, you want to retreat. And that's an option for vicious dogs and bears and other animals if they get too close. It weighs less than a gun, and there's a lot less to explain if you've pepper sprayed something than if you shot it. There's also something called Pixion pepper spray. It looks like a pistol, but it just shoots pepper spray. It's good to 7 meters. It shoots a glob of red pepper spray that's just sticky and sticks on the face of whatever they hit. It's for animals, but emergency can be used for humans. If you want to go to Vanessa Blank, Wild Woman Survival, she's got a video on it. It's really cool. So if you really want to protect yourself out in the wood from predators and you want to carry a gun, I would actually think that would be better than a gun. But everyone's going to make their own decision on that. Stay away from bears and do not feed them even by accident. It's really cool to see them at a distance, but you don't want them up close. So you want follow all the protocol for staying away from bears. One is to take a rope and a bag and put your food in the bag and throw the rope over the branch of a tree that's way out there, far away. You get between two trees, so you have two ropes, and it's hanging out in the middle of the air and the bear can't get to it. Another is to get a bear vault, and it's one of these things right here. And if you want to really be entertained, go on the internet, find a video of a bear trying to open one of these things, and it just frustrates the hell out of them because they play with it and they can't get inside. So you have two little clicks and it comes off like this. You put your food down in here and screw this on the top. And 99.9% of the time, the bear can't get into it. Apparently, somewhere there is a bear. It's the Einstein of bears that's figured out how to open these things. If you're in a place where there's people camp all the time, like say you're on the Appalachian Trail and you stay in one of those little shelters, they're full of mice. The mice are there to eat the food the people leave. And the mice are really good at getting into your food, so you have to learn how to hang up your food so that the mice can't get it. And I slept in a little cabin one night, and guess what? A mouse got into some of my food and ate it. He didn't eat much, but I really thought, I don't want that food now. I didn't have much to lose, so I just threw it away, and I suppose he went back and ate it again. Study and learn all these things for yourself. Feed your brain. Learn all this stuff and then go out and practice it. You can watch videos, you can read the books. I think the books are even a step above the videos. But the most important thing is to go out in the woods and practice. If you're not experienced, go do something easy and just learn a little bit each time. Or go with friends that are more experienced and you can learn from them. So, if you have questions or comments, please put them in there in the comments. I'd be glad to answer your questions, and glad to hear all your comments, pluses, minus, what's good and what's bad, and what your experiences are. So if you like the video, please click the like, and even better, go on Facebook or social media and share the link to the video to your friends. If you click that little bell, then you'll get notices when the next videos come out, and if you subscribe, that will help the channel. See you on the next video. Have a good time out there camping. See you later.